Hey guys, what's up? The video's about to start in a second, but I just want to preface and say I dropped my first preset pack. It's a collection of Ableton racks, and it's only $5. These racks come pre-mapped, like all 8 macros are all mapped out and everything. You don't have to, do too much with them. You can just drop them into your tracks and start playing with them. But, yeah. Okay, so like the title says, today we're going to be going over a cool technique to make lo-fi house bass lines, because I've gotten a few requests. So the first thing that we're going to do is I have this folder here that you'll get with this project file, of course, and all these samples in the description. So the first thing that we're going to do, of course, is we're going to load in some cassette noise, and I just have an 8-bar loop here set, and it's 125 BPM. Cassette noise, we're just going to do the same thing we always do. Set it on repitch, and that's about it. It just sounds like this. It's pretty quiet, but that's all we want. Now, although this is a bassline tutorial, we're going to go ahead and load in this kick, and this is something important that I want to touch on. This is just the kick that comes in the pack, like I said. It's free to download down below, as well as this project file and everything else. I'm going to cut that out at the 8th bar. Let's put this -6 and just hear it real quick. Okay, so it's just a pretty standard kick. Now the reason why I put the kick in before I do the bass line is because when you're doing bass lines for like house music and techno, and just generally like this style of music, the kick and the bass are like the foundation of your track. If those two things, you kind of want to start your track, honestly, by getting those two things in order and getting them sounding good together. Because if you don't, like I said, that's the foundation of your track. I mean, that's where a lot of the groove and like feel is going to come from. And really, like, the low end is just so important for this kind of music. So you really want to get those squared away before you do anything else. So I put in a kick first and just set it to -6 because this is a technique I use a lot where you sort of anchor everything around the kick, because the kick is oftentimes the loudest element in your mix. So you want to just get the kick at like a certain volume and then just sort of form everything around that. I know I put in the cassette noise first, but that doesn't really count. So the next thing that I want to do, and this is where this technique that I was talking about comes, is we're going to use a sample loop from an old hip-hop track to make the bass line. So the sample loop sounds like this. I'll play it on raw. Here, So I won't tell you what track that comes from, but you probably won't find it, honestly. It's a bit underground. So basically, the technique here, I've heard a lot of people doing this, like definitely Malgrab and like Baltra and stuff. What you do is you take this sample loop, and you hear there's a lot of low end in this thing, and there's a lot of low end in this style of music in general, like this hip hop from the 90s. And what you do is you speed it up to 125 BPM, so it sounds like this. And I'm gonna pitch it down a little bit, actually. Like, let's do -3. So you hear there's a lot of low end going on in there, and we can harness that and use it for our bass in this track. So all we really got to do after this is just put a little low pass filter on it. Let's say about like there. You really just want to let like mostly these frequencies through. And there you go. You have a pretty cool bass line. And it's a little bit more interesting and textured than if you just drew one in like with a synth or with like a synth sample in a sampler. Now I'm going to do a few more things to this because I think it needs a little bit more. This isn't quite ready. I mean, that's pretty solid, but we definitely want to do a few more things to it. I'm going to turn this cassette noise up a little bit. So the first thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put a bit warmer on it. Because of course, how could this be one of my tutorials without a bit warmer? And I'm just adjusting the balance between the kick and the bass. But this is what I was saying is like, you want to get them to sound good together. And I specifically picked this kick sample to sound good with this bass line. Like I had already tried all this stuff. And that's something you want to do as well. Like when you're making the beginnings of your track, you really want to get these two. You want them to sound like they're coming from the same world, you know? Like, and yeah, so that's what I did here. And then I've just got this a bit warmer on it to give it a bit more texture and some harmonics and distort it just a tiny bit, but in a nice way. So next I'm going to put a compressor on it. I'm not going to compress it. That's bad. But I'm going to put, I'm going to sidechain it to the kick just a little bit. So let's name this kick. And we're going to find that. I just open up the compressor. You press the little arrow, hit the sidechain button. And then you see this kick here. And now the threshold is essentially like your amount here. And we can just adjust that to taste. Okay, so that's about good. You can play with it more if you download this project file. I'm also going to copy that onto the cassette noise. And let's just turn this up just a little bit in the sample. Okay. So there we go. Now we have a strong foundation that we can build on for a track. We have, the kick and the bass are sounding right. They're pretty boomy and thumping. And yeah, it's really coming along. But you see, now that we have this really is the foundation because it's like all the low end. And that's like really important in house music, of course. That's like what makes everybody dance. That's just very important to it. But literally everything else, this is the foundation. Everything else is higher up in the frequency range than this. So we can just start building up. I just have a few samples in here, just like an open hi-hat and a clap. I didn't want to do too much because it's just sort of a simple basic loop that I'm more using to illustrate my point than anything. So I'm just going to make this a hi-hat loop real quick. We just copied this over a bunch of times. And I'm going to go ahead and copy this kick over. I think I have to turn this hi-hat up because it looks like a very quiet sample. So let's do that. And then last we just put the clap on. And we got a pretty good drum loop. I mean, this is, this could be your whole track if you wanted it to be. Or, you can use this as something to build on. And feel free to use this too, If you download this project file and you come up with something cool, feel free to release it. But you see how easy that was to start putting like percussion and stuff over this once we had the bass and the kick down? And that's really like what I want to take away here is that you want to get started with a kick and a bass. And then everything else can build over that. And that's like really very important with house music and like techno and just generally dance music, I guess. That's the way it works because everybody's dancing to the bass line. And then the kick sort of anchors it. So yeah, I hope you learned something. I hope you, I hope you like this video. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, all that. Send it to your grandma for all I care. And yeah, have a great day. Like I said in the beginning of the video, check out my new preset pack. It's in the description. And yeah, thanks.